Hi everyone, welcome to this week's episode of No Bullshit Talks, and I'm so excited to have my guest today on the show, Jennifer Shahade. I felt like I should be using your chess title, which is Women's Grandmaster Jennifer Shahade, but that is not just who you are. And you're a professional poker player, but there are no titles in poker, which we're totally going to come on to because that's so weird. And you're a podcaster, you're an author, you run book clubs, you do a million things. Like, how would you actually describe yourself?
Oh, that's a great question to start it off. Yeah. Well, I tend to, when I meet someone, I often say that I'm a professional chess and poker player. A lot of times I leave out poker depending on the situation. Because that's a bigger conversation. I am a PokerStars ambassador as well. And then I play poker and I'm a poker podcaster, but just like in chess, it tends to be like a few different things that I do, not just like one single one. So I often say I work in as a professional games player. And then I also talk about working in female empowerment.
Okay. So you actually prioritize chess over poker in like introduction wise, and yeah, that's interesting because I didn't know how to introduce you. Like, you do so many things. Like, how would you describe yourself? Would you also say you're an entrepreneur? Like, how would you
Maybe, although I feel like I don't manage people. So, I think entrepreneurship is really, and that's something I'm probably gonna have to start to do more in my career because everything that I'm doing is kind of blowing up. And my response to that tends to be like just to work harder. And I do have some people that I hire to do certain things, but in terms of like full-time team members, that's something that I kind of associate with most entrepreneurs. Maybe something, definitely like a skill set that I'm looking to build for sure. And then I think author and speaker is really a good catch-all too, because I do so much speaking and hosting, and then writing is like one of my first loves. So yeah, it's hard to kind of get by without a lot of slashes.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to ask you next, is that, like, so obviously it was so difficult to introduce you because you do so many different things and like pinpoint, a title for you. But then it's like, and I know you're going to say I can't answer this question, but which of those things do you think you love the most?
I like writing and speaking probably. Yeah, I like them both because I like the idea. I mean, I've been a commentator for many, many years. I've done so many commentary sessions. But I actually think that what I excel in is slightly more curated content, just because I'm like not always that great on my feet. I'm not bad. I mean, I've worked at it for so many years. I've learned some tricks, but I've never considered myself the sharpest, quickest thinker. I think I do really well when I'm able to kind of like structure things and come up with like a creative way to present information and like, just dole it out in the right quantities. I think that those are actually my strengths. So when I give like a 1 hour talk, or I, write an essay, like I'm able to kind of like think about all these insights and visuals and ideas that I have and say like, what's most important? How can I distill this to make people find it interesting? I think that is like where a lot of my talents lie. And that's why in my podcasts, they're heavily edited by my husband, who is an amazing editor. And I think that's why they're really good, because I'm not the best with completely unscripted stuff. I tend to use a lot of empty words, and just like most people, but I also work with somebody like Grandmaster Maurice Ashley, who just like, speaks as if he's writing a book right on in improv. Like he's literally giving a speech in improv. That's not me. That's not me.
But I'm warning you, Jen, because I don't have a husband who's an editor.
It's okay.
My podcast is not going to be heavily edited.
So. No. It also is different because when you're the guest, I think sometimes it's a little easier because somebody's pumping the questions to you, you know. When I'm the host, I usually find that sometimes I bumble a little bit.
Well, actually, and I'm kind of hoping you will, so that I have this unedited versions to haunt you forever on my podcast. You're like kind of nervous now if I'm joking or not. But no, we're gonna move on to your chess career, I guess, first, because I guess that's how I know you for a start. So I know you as a pro chess player. You are a women's grandmaster, which basically defines you as one of the top female players ever in the world, which is kind of cool. But you know, tell me about your love for chess. Like, when did you fall in love with the game, and like, you know, what kind of journey do you think would you describe you've taken throughout chess?
That's a great question. I think that I really fell in love with the game. I have a very vivid memory of Brazil when I was 15. That was my first international tournament. And I got invited kind of on a coincidence. I wasn't that high rated, but I think it was like during the holidays. So some other people had declined their invitations. Some people didn't want to go all the way to Brazil. It was during the school year. I don't know all the reasons, but I got an invite. And my brother came along, who's a very strong chess player, was already really good at the time. He was already like a very strong master, maybe even a senior master. My father came, who's a FIDE master, and I wasn't that good, but I was starting to get better. And I remember being so nervous before my first game that I felt like I had to throw up, like the quintessential butterflies in my stomach. And I played a fantastic game. And like that, of course, was a wake up call to me that nerves aren't a bad thing, that being nervous can actually be a strength. And then I think even more importantly, I started to play like all these aggressive swashbuckling games. And in some of the breaks in the tournament, I would go to my room and I would like look at this chess problem book. I think it was by Chernev. And I just felt really connected to chess as an art at that time. And it kind of clicked for me. The chess isn't just a competition, it's also an art, which is a line from the Queen's Gambit. But this really did click for me in Brazil. And also, what clicked for me is that chess is an opportunity to see the world and to meet people that I wouldn't have met otherwise. I was really unpopular in junior high school. I was bullied a lot. In high school, I was kind of more of an in-betweener. Like I wasn't bullied anymore because people thought I was like kind of cool that I like got to travel the world to play chess. But I was not popular either. I was just kind of like weird in a good way, right? But the idea of like going to all these like discotheques and parties with like music and meeting people from all these countries, it was like something I'd never experienced before in my life. And I couldn't believe it. I was like accepted. People were like really interested in me. And yeah, it was a very formative experience. So I loved chess and I love the culture that it introduced me to.
You've just told me a bunch of things that have just shocked me, because I'm just like, I know, I don't know when I met you, maybe 10 years ago. I feel like maybe more. It's
A
probably
little
more.
bit more than that, I think. Maybe in but I don't remember. I think definitely before St. Louis.
Yeah, no,
But
it
I think
was
it's been about 12 years, maybe something
yeah,
like that. Maybe London at something in London, probably. Yeah, like at
yeah.
Malcolm's shop or something.
Yeah, and you know, it's been a while, and ever since I've known you, you're like the cool one. You were always the coolest person in chess. Like the fact that you were bullied in junior high shocks me to the core. And the fact that, you know, you were also scared, and you said you at 15 you were not that good, and I've always only known you as this like US women's champion, for example. Like, you know, you've always been super good. So it shows you, I guess, that everyone has to start somewhere. And I guess that's why the Queen's Gambit like resonates with a lot of people, and probably does resonate with yourself, like, you know, in that sense. And, you know, she wasn't that good. And when Beth Harmon, when she first started and she turned up to a tournament, and she was like, you know, a little bit weird, a little bit intimidated, and she got good very quickly. And I guess that's probably how you can relate to stuff like that. But I love the thing about traveling, like you said, different cultures. I've also the same thing. That's obviously I wouldn't have met you hadn't have traveled as much. I've, you know, managed to go to 81 countries, and I would love to go to every country in the world. That's my aim. I don't even know if it's physically possible. COVID's definitely put a damper in that plan, but 81 is still pretty impressive. I think that like there aren't many people who have done that, and I would never have gone to even a fraction of those if it wasn't for chess. So
Yeah, me too. Me too. I totally agree with that. And I had no idea you went to 81 countries. That's amazing. I don't think I've been to nearly that many. I haven't written it down for a while. When I was a kid, I was very interested, maybe a teenager, because my first experience abroad was that tournament in Brazil. I was obsessed with like writing them down and counting them when I was a kid. But yeah, it was just the opportunity to go to a new country just felt like such a gift. I was so grateful for it.
I got a scratch map. That's what I did as well. And I thought it was so fun to do it. And that's how I could tell. But I guess you were in the US, so there was less reason to travel because you had a lot of opportunities in the US to play. So that's probably why. But what I wanted to, because I know quite a lot about your chess. I wanted to understand, I guess, when you started playing poker and what kind of got you into that. Because you started with chess first, from what I understand. And then you moved.
Oh, yeah.
And so how did that develop? I know there's definitely a huge correlation between the two. Like there were so many people who do both, but you know, you do both at a very high level. When did your poker journey start?
It was very similar to my chess journey in that chess I was introduced to when I was like 5 or 6, but I didn't really like fall in love with it until I was in high school. And I would say poker was a bit similar. My brother introduced me to it because he was a professional. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed playing what we call sitting goes on PokerStars and, being good, even though I just started, because at that time there was a poker boom. So really anyone who had learned some basic strategy could have an edge very quickly. But I was working on my book Chess Bitch at the time, and I was really getting passionate about writing. So I didn't like get fully hooked into poker until a little later. One thing I found about poker during those times when I first learned was that it was a very different culture than chess. It was very, I felt like it was very based in Los Angeles, and it was very much about like who you knew and how much money you had, and like a lot of stuff that I was not that great at navigating. So, in poker, I didn't really have like the network I needed, I think, to kind of like make inroads. And I wasn't really willing to put in like the time that some of my friends were, because I was also busy with writing. So I just kind of dabbled in it for many years. But then I got invited I ended up winning it. Actually, it's funny because, I'm the director of US Chess Women now. And the thing that actually got me more hooked on poker was something that PokerStars was doing at the time called PokerStars Women. They did it only for a little while, because then I think they wanted to kind of like build their women's programming in more globally to the brand rather than be like a separate entity. But for a little while, they did something called PokerStars Women, which was these special tournaments and events and promotions to try to like send female players around the world. And because I was like a writer / chess coach, I never had a lot of money to try to like qualify for like a 10,000 pound tournament, right? Because in order to qualify for a 10,000 pound tournament, you need to, use a few $1,000s to try to like to satellite in, right? So that was a little tricky. But then they started doing these women's events that were like only a couple $1,000s. So now all of a sudden you could satellite in for $200, $300, right? So, and of course you could satellite for even lower. But the thing about that is then you have to put a lot of time into it. Because every time, the way it works is like, suppose you're trying to go from $10 to a $10,000 tournament, then you need to spend, a week grinding the $10 up into the 100 and so on. It's definitely feasible. But for somebody who had like a job and a lot of other stuff going on like me, this was an easier path. And I did it. I got a chance to go to Monaco, to the Bahamas, to Madrid, all through these PokerStars Women's initiatives. And that like introduced me to all these people, and I kind of got more passionate about the game. So it's funny, looking back on it, it's like a precursor to some of the stuff I'm doing with US Chess Women, although of course that's with kids, not with grownups. It's mostly with kids. It's with kids and grownups. But the PokerStars Women was exclusively for women, of course, because kids can't play poker. Or they can't play in casinos, or
not for money.
Yeah.
I thought it was incredible. Like, but you actually got to travel from both, that means, from the chess and the poker.
Yeah. And I think it's also just the travel gets you more passionate because you meet people. Like
Mm.
in the end of the day, I still played more online than I played live, but the live was about like meeting the people that would like, help give you a community so that you could like understand poker better and, just enjoy these places and the lifestyle that, you're aiming for in that world.
I actually remember we met up in London and we went out for dinner and everything. And I think you were on your way to playing that. I forgive me for not remembering the exact name of it, but it was that Chinese one, and you actually won it. Like, and I remember you were telling me you were nervous. You're playing one of the biggest tournaments of your life, and then I was like, suddenly, like, I had dinner with you one week, and then the next week you were like, oh, front page of all this news, going, I won 100 grand, and I'm like, oh my god, that's so cool. So it was like, for me, it was like listening to a fairy tale, like you would just hear one minute, oh, I'm not sure, I'm nervous, and I've got this big event of mine, and then it's next minute it's like, I've won it. Like, obviously that's kind of surreal for me, but what is that real journey like? How is it going from, like you said, like thinking I can't afford to have $2,000 to enter this tournament to winning 100 grand? Like, that's a fairy tale, but you've done it. Like, talk me through that. That must have been crazy.
Well, I feel like it's a fairy tale in a way, but you also have to consider that usually the poker fairy tales told are like going from, what is it? Going from like $20, like 2 million. Like this is still, a little bit more, it's a little bit more realistic, right?
Yeah.
So what happened was I was one of the best players in this variant called open face Chinese. So I had some people who also staked me for part of the tournament. I put some in and they put some in. So that's why it's like, it sounds like it was a 10,000 euro tournament, but I didn't put up all the 10,000 euro. So that makes it a lot easier because if you're skilled enough, people will buy what you call stakes in you or like percentages. So they buy like a piece of you as if it's like a corporation. And then when you win, they get a percentage and you get a percentage. So yeah, that really makes it easier. But yeah, it's true that my, like a lot of people who work really hard, not everyone, but a lot of people who work really hard. I felt like just in general, I was working so hard in chess and in poker that was the reason I was able to start playing more and traveling more, because I was able to find ways to increase my income so that I could now my bankroll and my income. So now that I could spend, a couple $1,000s on a tournament without having to stress about it in the same way as when I was in my early 20s, or mid 20s.
So like, you've been a pro in both. You're pro in, well, you are a pro in both. You're a pro poker player and you're pro chess player. Those two clearly correlate, and there's a lot of talk out there about how they do and how they influence each other. From your experience, is like being good in one helpful to the other, and how? Like, which one do you think is more influential on the other as a game?
I think that chess and poker are kind of converging.
Oh, really?
Because I feel like poker is becoming a little bit more like chess because the way people study the game using what they call solvers and just their rigorous approach to analyzing situations that they're bad at and getting better at it is very much like what a chess player has been doing for many years, ever since, the advent of computers in chess. And chess is becoming more glamorous with people, the top chess players and the top chess personalities having agents and managers and sponsorship deals. That's so similar to the way it was in poker during the boom. So I actually feel like in some weird way they're converging into the same game. Pretty soon it'll be the same game.
So if you were to give advice to anyone who wants to play poker or get better at poker or get better at chess or get better at both, what advice would you give them to do?
Well, you mean to be a professional or to just like enjoy it?
I mean, just get better at it, like to improve at it. It doesn't, I feel like a decision to go professional is is not necessarily, I don't know, you tell me, did you decide you were going to be professional, or did you just keep playing, got better at it, and then it suddenly became an option to go professional? I feel like you don't make an early decision and you work your way up there. I just mean, in general, if someone's playing chess or they're playing poker, like, is there a way that they can, study each that will help in, like, actually help better both of their games, for example? I mean, because as you said, they're converging, right, in terms of how they are.
Yeah, I think that being really deliberate is important. Like, thinking hard about what you're going to study and like thinking critically about it. I think that's important. Like thinking about the quality of the hours that you put in rather than the quantity.
Mhm.
I think that's huge. I find that writing really helps me to like just review that I understand what I like am trying to get at. Reading real books, I think, is pretty helpful too, because it kind of forces you to slow down and not just like click through things or like absorb too much data at one time. I think that is like the hard part. Like it can be easy to just absorb so much data
Mhm.
and information that you're not actually thinking on your own. And if you're not thinking on your own, it's really hard to get better at chess and poker, because it's like it's not just absorbing stuff, it's also like critically thinking about what you're taking in and how to get better at the things you're not good at.
I think what you just said about the quality versus quantity is huge, right? And it's applicable to everything. But that's it. I see so many people studying something and they're doing it all day, every day, but they're not really studying the right things. And like, you said, you could spend 1 hour being really specific and working on one area of your game, and actually that would probably be better than 10 hours of just generalized, like watching YouTube videos half-heartedly and things like that. So it's kind of insightful to hear that. And you were saying that what you're doing now with the US chess is like reminiscent of what you thought that the PokerStars are doing with the PokerStars women, but obviously for kids. Talk us through like what you're doing at the moment, because I see you doing so many things for US women. You've got so many great classes on. So talk us through what you're doing at the moment, what your plans are, what do you envisage being the future of like US women's chess?
Well, my vision for US chess women is to bring more girls and women and gender minorities into chess, and also to just have like a different approach about building community through chess, and like not just obsessing over, we need to get all the best players we can. Although I think that's really great too, to have like really good players who are passionate about the game, because the more you put into chess, the more potential you can get out of it as well. Like all that travel and, exceptional success that I mentioned earlier. But there's also so much value that can be gotten by people learning the game and using it as a networking tool and as a concentration tool. So a lot of the things that we do are with that in mind. How do we reach the most number of people? So we do a lot of events, which you have been a part of many times, where the girls, they have a social event. So they all learn about chess, but they also get to meet one of their role models, and we laugh. And sometimes I do events with girls from Kenya and the United States. And you've been to a lot of those, where they meet each other and they go into breakout rooms and talk about their chess study plans, their holiday plans. And then they end up playing each other in a blitz tournament at the end of the event. So it's just what I was talking about my first experience in Brazil. It's like here, chess is like a beautiful game and also a way to unlock experiences that you might not get otherwise, experiences and people that you wouldn't get to meet otherwise. And
Yeah.
I want to explore that, because I think it's great. I mean, it's there. That is there in chess, but it's not equally accessible to everyone, right? I want to like explore just like making that more of the whole point of what we're doing with chess.
See, that's so beautiful. Like, it's so refreshing to hear. Like, you're right. I've been to so many of them, and I loved, like, I think we did a Christmas one with the Kenyan and US girls, and that was so cool. Like, it was there were so many countries there, and and the girls were so sweet. They were like wishing each other Merry Christmas and talking about the different weather across the continents, and like it showcased the reason why I play chess. And yes, the game is a beautiful game, but it's the fact that you get connected with people from all different cultures from all over the world and learn so many different things about all these different people. And consistently meeting fascinating people from everywhere. I loved that. That's exactly the reason why I kept playing and kept traveling. And the fact that you just said that it's not accessible for everyone, but that's what you want to make happen. That's so nice to hear, because I know that in some parts of the world, and you can even see it in the UK, that sadly, like, chess can accidentally become elitist. Like, you know, chess tournaments can be expensive to travel. So like we were talking about it, you know, it costs a lot of money to go all around the world. I know that my parents were telling me how much money it costs to send me to different junior tournaments, to go to the World Youth Championships and European Youth Championships over here. And it's just, it adds up. And if it's going to be just a hobby, it's such an expensive hobby. And if you've got other kids or doing other things, like, so the fact that you said to make it accessible for everyone, I think is great, because chess is such a beautiful game. One of the only games in the world that you can play anywhere in the world, any gender, any race, any age, and there shouldn't be a monetary boundary to be able to play this game, or any other reason why you shouldn't have access to it. So I think that the reason why you're doing it is beautiful to me.
Thank you. And yeah, I mean, there's so many people around the world that are kind of like on board with that mission. I mean, from, you know, Armenia having chess in the schools, in every school, every public school, to a lot of New York schools that are doing the same thing, or schools all over the country in America, and nonprofit organizations that, you know, help schools who don't have chess give access to it to anyone in the school. And I think that's like the kind of thing we really need to push, especially after the pandemic, because a lot of those programs have been kind of on pause, or at a, you know, still in progress, but maybe at a lesser intensity, because kids aren't able to play in live events. That's what I think, you know, I need to keep the eye on the ball with that, because it's going to be a very big year for trying to redress some of the inequalities that were heightened by a pandemic year. Like this next couple years, I think is going to be really important in making sure that we bridge that gap rather than widen it. And I think chess is a big tool for that. Chess could be a really good tool.
Yeah, I definitely do think so. I think it's a great way to connect people as well from everywhere. And I think if the pandemic's shown anything to people, it's that you can't take things for granted. And, you know, especially now when all this has happened, people are realizing how easy it is to connect people from all over the world. So hopefully that will bring chess and show how versatile it is, and how we can bring people together from chess, which would be amazing. But tell me more about the Mad Woman's Book Club, because first of all, I love the name. I want to hear how you came up with that. And secondly, it's another initiative that you're doing to kind of, you know, bring women and chess together. It's not just obviously chess, but women everywhere together again over another great initiative. So tell me more about that.
Well, the Mad Woman's Book Club came from the chess queen, which was called the crazy Mad Woman when she first became the most powerful piece in the board circa 1500. So I always just love that analogy, because it shows that people are resistant to female power, even if it ultimately makes the world a better place. Or in this case, it made chess a better game when the queen became the most powerful piece. And it sounded like a fun name for a book club. You know, the Mad Woman, you know, because, you know, a lot of women are mad, as we should be. But it's also, you know, it can be read in two different ways, like literally mad, or just mad for the world, right? As that famous poem says, which I can't remember the author of it now, but you know which one I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And
passionate is what they meant in terms of that passion for mad.
Yeah, exactly. Passionate and mad. Also, so it could be angry because the world is unjust, or passionate about the world, and both of them worked. So the reason I started it was because I wanted a social club for women to connect around chess and literature that wasn't restricted to people of a certain level. Right. Because that's hard, because girls, it's a little easier because there's so many girls who play chess, that like my girls club and my Kenya girls initiative with US chess girls. I mean, honestly, we're usually hitting between 800 and 1800, which sounds like a wide range, but you know, usually it's more like 1,000 to 1,600. And a lot of times people who are on the polls they're just interested in joining. And if they're on the lower rated side, they can kind of like, get better because they're taking part. And if they're higher rated, usually they want the social atmosphere. So it's a little easier to do that with girls, but with women, it's harder because you often have total beginners, or you even have like chess masters who might want to take part in a social event. So that's the Mad Woman's Book Club. Now I have chess champions who come and, are 2,000, 2,200 plus rated, and people who just know the rules. But because it's not only related to chess, it's related to like great books on chess or games or female empowerment. Everybody can connect at the same time. So that's why we did it. And it's been great so far. It's been really fun. I wish you could come to some of the sessions. They're at 8 p.m. Eastern though, which is a little tricky.
I know. I've been getting such FOMO from your posts on like Instagram and stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, I really want to be there. But then I'm just like, I want to try to go to this one. Then I totally fall asleep. So it's like,
well, maybe you'll be able to come to one. Maybe the next one. The next one's with Dr. Chanda Prescott Weinstein, who wrote The Disordered Cosmos. And that book is about her passion for astrophysics and also about making astrophysics more accessible to everyone, and how like the field itself is lacking if everybody isn't included. See, that's what I like. Like Chanda is a real genius. You'd love her. And I think that one of the issues with like diversity and the idea of diversity is like, it's great to want to make your world more diverse, like wonderful. But I think sometimes the focus is on like the performance of diversity and like having like a nice photo to put in your brochure on your staff page. Whereas, in a field like science, where you obviously need more insights from all types of people, the focus should just be like on like, man, like if we don't make sure that every kid has access to science, then we might not solve global warming or climate change. Like that's the focus. The focus is not on like having a nice photo. The focus is on like making sure that we're harnessing the talent of everyone, not just people who go to a certain school. And I see chess the same way, that it's chess, of course, is not as much an end in itself. I mean, it can be for some people. It can be a wonderful life and a wonderful end in itself. But also, I sometimes think chess is like a gateway to people thinking that they're smart, and people thinking that they can do hard things and technical things, or artistic things. I mean, chess can be a gateway to art as well, not just to technical things. That it was kind of like that for me. So I think that chess is just so broad as a subject. It can go in so many different directions. It's great for harnessing talent. It's great for showing people that they didn't think they were good at this, and no, they're awesome at this. What else could they be awesome at? The sky's the limit. Even my 4-year-old, I see that in him, because he struggled a little bit with some of his writing when he was around 3, writing and drawing. But he's really good at chess. I mean, okay, obviously, obviously, like I'm helping him, so there's a reason for that. But I see that it helps his confidence. If you're good at one thing, you can see that like you can be good at anything. It's like, it's not you and your deficiency that makes you a little bit worse at X, Y, or Z.
I think that was going to be one of my next questions, is that, we've talked about you coaching girls and everything, but obviously you've got a little boy, so it's not like you're just focused on coaching girls. How is it coaching Fabi? And how does he feel? And does he realize like how much of a big star you are? And I feel like, because I know that I think you've got a coach for him, right? And I was going to ask, how is he doing with you coaching him? Or like, is Uncle Greg, like, does he listen to you guys, or does he need like someone else who's separate from family to be able to teach him?
Well, I love teaching him chess, and we do it a lot, but there's this company, Storytime Chess, that we get lessons from too, because they're great, and they're used to having like 3 and 4-year-olds, and they tell like a story and they teach him chess. It's really fun to have like a mix of people educating him.
And it's a totally different style as well. Like there's a mixture of course across like you guys. That's really cute.
Yeah. It's just fun. He just likes chess. Like I'm not trying to like, raise the Polgar sisters, like, It's more just that he enjoys it, and it's like a great way for him to spend his time, especially in this pandemic time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you think there's like an age which is too young to play, or when they should start playing? What do you think about that? Because you've got a lot of experience coaching kids, and obviously you've got a young one yourself now. What are your thoughts in terms of kids like neurodevelopment, and how much they can understand chess? Is it going to help their development? Like, what are your thoughts on that process by teaching?
Before I had a kid, I would have said that 2 and 3 is too young. Because I would have said like it's a waste of time, but I was wrong, because it's not about waste of time. Like, life shouldn't always be so goal oriented. Like, it's fun for a 2-year-old to like mess around with the chess pieces. It's fun for a 4-year-old to play chess. It's not about like a goal. Like, if it's only about a goal, maybe it's like, maybe it is a waste of time and you should just start at 5. I don't know. I do know that the Polgar, the famous Polgar dad, Laszlo Polgar, he started Susan and Sophia at like 3 or 4, and he waited till 5 for Judith. So apparently he thought that like it was better to start at 5. But I for me, in that, and I heard that story, and I think that influenced me, and I was like, yeah, maybe we should just wait till 5. But then when I saw Fabian just kind of gravitate towards the chess pieces, it's like, well, who cares if like it doesn't stick? Like, it's just fun right now. It's the same ridiculous misconception I had before I had kids. Like, I said so many stupid things about having kids before I had kids. I think one of my clunkers was, I said, what's the point of taking your kid to places like, New York or Disney World, because they're not going to remember it. So that was one thing I said, which actually a lot of people say. So I'm not like the only person to say that. So that was something I said. And then I had a kid and I was like, what? That doesn't make any sense at all. Like, I'm basically saying like his current enjoyment is irrelevant because he's not going to remember it when he's older. Like, that
I
is
totally remember my trips. I first went on a plane when I was 2. This is probably where my love of travel comes from.
wow.
And
Sick memory.
yeah, well, I didn't remember that one, but I remember vividly my holiday when I was 4 and I was in Jamaica. I remember it vividly. And then
Wow.
I think I was also 4 when I was in Florida. I remember my first Disneyland experience there. And I was like, I remember them very, very well. Like, and so, and even if I don't like have very distinct memories, I remember Tunisia when I was about 5 as well. Like, I remember, and I've still got a toy that I brought back from there, and I still cherish that as a memory. And I was really young. And I just remember like, I still actually genuinely went from that trip. I was like 4 or 5, the scenes of different stuff and being on a camel and like things like that. And I just remember thinking like camel humps and like, things like that. And I think it's like, it instills in your culture somewhere. Like, even if they're not easy to recall, I think they come out in certain ways. And I definitely think like kids' experiences are definitely a great thing for travel when you're younger. Sure.
Yeah, that's amazing. You must have a great memory. But I also think it's just like not everything needs to be a means to an end. And also the fact that some people don't remember things when they're really, really young, like 1, 2, 3, it probably means that they're really important. Like, they're actually not storing in long-term memory, but they're like kind of planting seeds for like their their creative and cognitive skills for their whole lives potentially. Like, I'm not a scientist, so I don't know for sure, but I think it was pretty pompous of me to think that like because somebody can't remember something, it's irrelevant. Yeah, don't play with the kids at all. Leave them.
Oh man, at least you've you're good enough to admit that you're wrong and you've owned up to your mistakes. You're like, okay, that was stupid, I know what I'm doing now, at least. But I wanted to talk again because about the fact that all this stuff that you've been doing, if you think about everything we've talked about, you're so big on supporting women. And for me, you are obviously one of the biggest ambassadors for women in chess, 100%, without a doubt. And the same as women in poker. Like, to me, that's what you are, an ambassador for both of them. I'm sure you've been asked 1,000,001 times about sexism in chess and all this kind of stuff. I don't want to dwell on the really negative stuff because that's not what it's about. I want to hear about why you're so passionate about, teaching women, and did it come from a negative experience? Maybe it did, but like, what is the reason that's driving you and why you think it's so important that women play chess and poker?
Well, I just think that the games are really fun and really bring in all sorts of like important life skills and networks. And so cutting them off from women seems really regrettable to me. And like ever since I was a kid, I almost quit chess because I was the only girl. So the idea that other people would be quitting and missing out on all this travel and like, flow experience and all that, like it bothered me. And so I was always looking for ways to get more girls and women in. And lately, I feel like the time is a little bit more ripe for it, in that I remember, maybe 12 years ago when I did initiatives like this, they were successful, but not as successful as they are now. Like now it's like there are people hungry for this. And so that makes it a little bit easier because the effort that you put in is quickly converted to value. Right. And that's what you want, as anyone, whether you're an entrepreneur trying to make money or you're like in my work with US Chess Women, it's nonprofit employment. So it's not like it might not be money value, but it's like value that if I put in an hour, I'm getting this much inspiration from kids, And I don't always want to look at it like that, analytically, because some things do take more effort and more development and they're valuable too. But the positive reinforcement that you're getting lately is much, much higher because there's that interest, which is awesome. And that really drives me. I mean, I do see like occasionally it's important to talk about the negative, about sexism and harassment. My philosophy is I like to talk about things that other people aren't talking about a lot of the time. One of the things that worries me about our current culture, and I don't like the phrase cancel culture because I think it's too, first of all, it's mostly been co-opted by the right, which I don't identify with. And then often it can apply to things as vast as a poorly worded tweet to, actual, serial abuse. Like, so, I mean, yes, like we can cancel the serial abuser. Should we cancel somebody who made a bad tweet? Well, probably not. I guess it depends on how bad it was, but most likely not, right?
Yeah.
So I don't like how it's all kind of like mushed up into the same pot, that really bothers me. This kind of that kind of culture. But there are some things that I think, and what bothers me about it is I think that it sometimes becomes like trendy to find the one person or the one, a person who's like annoying and like just pile on them. Whereas I think it's more valuable to find people that are, that can improve their behavior that no one's talking about, right? Like that provides more value. Again, if you're looking at it from that value point of view, I don't like the kind of pile on culture. That's what I call it. I don't call it cancel culture. I call it pile on culture because that's what I don't like.
So, I mean, it's so difficult with social media out there because obviously that just spirals everything, good and bad, good and bad. But, as soon as someone says anything, it's taken out of context and it's thrown everywhere and you can't get rid of it. So there is a lot of negativity out there. But what would you say the chess and poker world can do to actually help this? Because at the moment you're one person, right? You are one person. You are doing so much for both the chess and poker world and helping women like get into both. But like, what can both the chess world and the poker world do to help this? Like, there are obviously a few individuals out there who feel as passionately as you do and are working really, really hard to make changes. But inevitably, I don't think enough is being done. I know that it's really difficult to say what should be done, but as a woman in chess and as a woman who's learning how to play poker now, by the way. I know
Poker
you
power,
guys have
right?
come up to me. Yeah. And so exactly, I joined because of Schwan, right? And so I met Schwan, and I was totally inspired by how amazing she is. And she's doing that Poker Power initiative. And I thought that was really cool, a women's only kind of poker thing. I thought I'd get involved, and I did. And you know, just kind of got hooked quite quickly, which is probably not a good thing. And maybe we can have a chat in a couple of months' time and see how it's actually going. But the point is, I think that there's still a very small proportion of women who play both. And I think that as someone who's obviously been a professional chess player and coach and writer, I also do what I can to help more girls and women play chess. But again, I'm only one person. What do you think that the chess world can do to make this, to change this?
I think there's a lot of things. I mean, there's so many things from the positive. I think that I'll start with the positive, show more women games, show more games by people of color, get more examples if you have guest lectures for your class. But even if you don't have a budget for guest lectures, just like showing games by women, it's that's a start too. Chess problems, chess puzzles, in terms of over focusing on women and their looks. I think that's something that it's easy for people to kind of address. Make sure that if you're writing an article or doing a write-up about a girls tournament, that you're not only putting photos and never including the games, or less focus on the games. I think you can also try, if you're a man, you can try to shut down sexist talk, especially if it's all men, because that's considered a safe space for sexism, and we want to change that. We want that's an important change. So you can be that change, and I think more and more men are doing that, which is really great. Another thing I'd suggest is to foster a culture where it's not normal for a coach to be in the room alone with one kid. That's something that a lot of organizations are adopting as part of their laws. They're bylaws. It's called the rule of 3. So if you have one kid and one grown-up, that's not good. It should be 2 kids and a grown-up, so that there's always a witness. And I mean, most of the time it sounds silly, but it sounds silly because most of the time it's completely not necessary, right? Because usually teachers and coaches who get into the industry are wonderful people who are passionate about, providing good experiences for kids. But the problem is the few times that you do get that bad experience can be so traumatic for, a child, that it can almost ruin their lives, right? So yeah, it's very, very high risk situation. And that's why I think the culture needs to change to address that. Right.
Yeah.
So those are a bunch of things. There's so many more that we can do, but that's a start.
I think it's the looks thing's actually really interesting, because it's true. If you look through social media, there's people who are promoting women in chess, but actually they're only posting glamorous photos and being look at this person, and they're it's a glamorous photo, but not talking anything about the quality of chess they've played, or showing the games or their favorite openings. Just look at this person, look how beautiful they are. And it's yeah, they are, but they also play beautiful chess, and that's what you should be promoting. And so I actually agree with that. I think there is definitely too much focus on people's looks, as opposed to again, and if you're trying to inspire the young girls to play, that's not what they'd be looking at. They want to know, oh, this girl came from this country, this town, that might be their local town. They went to X school and they were the only girl in the school, but they still managed to beat all the boys. I want inspirational stories like that. I feel like that actually has more of an effect than this girl's super pretty, but she can also play chess. I don't know. That's what I think when I see that sort of thing.
Well, I think it depends on the platform. Unfortunately, there are some platforms where you're basically, as we say in poker, drawing dead. I mean, I used to do more Instagram, especially when I was the communications person for like the US chess social media. And I mean, I would like, if you put like a chess diagram, or if you put like a person's face, like let alone an attractive female, like, you know, the number of impressions that you get are just like drastically different, you know? So that we're also like dealing with a culture and an algorithm that is promoting lookism very, very heavily. So like, that's another factor to consider. And like, you know, teens, of course, are interested in makeup and looks and social media. So it's very, very tricky. It's very tricky, but maybe you have to go to the platform where they're primed for intellectual stimulation.
Maybe
like
though. I'm not saying that that's the case, but Instagram, you're right, it is very visual.
Yeah.
But I think that there could still be a way to do it. So there are chess accounts on Instagram which are just chess positions and like, you know, like
that's
boring stuff, and they do really, really well. And I think about and what I'm trying to get at is the fact that yes, okay, let's put an attractive female face on Instagram. It's going to get a bunch of likes, people are going to like it, but what message are you giving out as an account? And like, you know, what have you gained from those likes? This is the same thing I talk about in my job in marketing. It's like vanity metrics, like, you know, so you've gained a bunch of likes, but what positive impacts have you made from that post? So if you were to do a post which is a position or an interesting fact or something that's actually, like you said, maybe girls are interested in makeup, fine. So let's do a, you know, say if we were to put a picture of you and they'll be like, okay, so Jen Shahade is women's grandmaster, you know, her favorite opening is the Sicilian Dragon, and like, you know, like some stuff like that, and then be like, oh, you know, here's her makeup tip if for the girls who actually are interested in it. Like, if you thought that it was inclined that way, it has a purpose. Like, it's still educating, because makeup tutorials are huge on Instagram. They are huge, and it's still an education. Like, it's still like you're educating them about something, but just putting a face there to be like, this person's hot, to me, that doesn't do anything apart from promote sexism, promote, like, you know, positive discrimination, or however you want to phrase it. It's like, if you do it with a purpose, you can still get away with it, but it still has to have a positive influence, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a complicated topic. I broached it in Chess Pitch, and, you know, because I also think like makeup and fashion are valid, you know, pursuits.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, they're,
but that's what I'm saying. You could make it into a makeup tutorial. You've got a reason to put that. Or like, I love posts which are just like, you know, again, it could be like, oh, this is so-and-so, she's wearing a dress from XYZ. And like, you know, and that's a fashion angle. But that's what I'm saying. I don't think they're still done like that. I still think they're just done like, here's a hot girl. Like, you know, there's no reason for that apart from seeming a bit pervy, in my opinion. Like, you know, if you showcase like fashion and like, you know, or even like, I love doing my nails, right? I love doing my nails. And if it's like, oh, here's like, you know, so-and-so, and look how glamorous her nails are, and, you know, her makeup. And actually, I've seen some photographers do great stuff like that. There's been, you know, some females who've been captured and they just have perfect makeup and perfect nails, and I've been like, oh my god, this woman's incredibly immaculate, and been admiring her. And then she comes out about that and how she does it. That's a positive influence on women. That's a difference. And I just think it's, again, that kind of how you post it. So like, that photographer posted that with that in mind, but didn't just post a picture and be like, yeah, fire emoji. Like, you know, there's a big difference, right? And so I feel like it's just that attitude towards doing it and how to promote it is where I think I have issues with.
Such a difficult topic, you know. It's so tough because it's so different right now with like streaming and social media. There is such a focus. There's always been a focus on females and how they look, but I think that really heightens it. And I just like to get to platforms where I think platforms where there is more focus on what a woman is saying, even on Twitch, because obviously being beautiful or being attractive is good for streaming, whatever gender you are, but certainly it requires a lot more skill than that. So that's a space where you kind of have to have the complete package, it seems, to be really successful. But I don't know. I'm just like, with my work with girls, I I try to focus on the chess itself and the community building and like subjects outside chess, like, whether it's geography or learning Swahili or Spanish. And I think the format of Zoom, being that lots of people don't have their cameras on, it really does seem to kind of like promote that intellectual and social development more than anything else.
And I think that's, like I said, it's really refreshing to hear that you're focusing on the real parts, which should be good. And, that's going to help a child's development. And actually, I think the best bit about it is that they can learn these things and they're transferable skills across the board and should help them overall with their education. I think that's what the great thing is about it. So I love that. But tell me like about the plans you've got now going forward then. What does the future look like for you, like with your chess, with your poker, with your US Women's Club, the book club, the anything? Like you've got so many things going on. First of all, where did you find the time to do all this? But like what's next? What's 2022 looking like on the rest of this year? How is it looking?
I'm like feeling really optimistic about it. I mean, I've got a lot of exciting projects that I hope to like kind of level up with the promotion of chess, and then I'll keep a lot of what I'm doing going. Some of the programs will see a little bit of a change because as people go out into the world more, we might need to like adjust the schedule to prepare for the hybrid future that we're seeing. But I think most of them will keep going. I mean, we'll still have our Mad Women's Book Club and definitely our Girls Club, our Kenya workshops. I've got my 2 podcasts, Ladies Night, which you were on, as well as The Grid, which is my poker podcast.
And that won an award, right? Your grid one. That was
yes, I
cool.
did. I won the Global Poker Award for that, which was a huge honor because it was against a lot of the people that we play Mafia with. Got you this one. Got you, especially David, laughing.
Oh, so it's like now, actually, wait a minute. So I've got this fun because you're not just a pro chess player, you're not just a pro poker player, but you're also basically a pro podcaster as well, which is an award-winning podcaster, at least, which is super cool. So Ladies Night is mainly chess focused, right? And that's kind of what you're promoting, women in chess, and The Grid talks about various poker stuff. Who should be tuning into what?
Well, definitely poker players should listen to The Grid, or people who are just starting to learn poker. Like you should listen to The Grid. That'll be a lot of fun for you. And then Ladies Night, I think, is a podcast that anyone who's interested in chess should definitely check out. We have top women players, top female personalities. Also, sometimes we have men on as well, especially if they have something they specifically want to say about women in the game. Just in general, I would always like to emphasize that female empowerment is for men too, because men benefit from a world where women execute their talents. Like that's always been true. And I think it's really important for people to wake up to that.
Is there anything you can disclose about your new projects, or is it all still hush hush?
Oh gosh, it's not even that I can't disclose. It's just that I don't think it won't be as interesting to people until it's a little more fleshed out. But there's TV stuff, there's writing stuff. It'll be nice to kind of like bring some bigger projects out to the world, because I do so much, but a lot of them are like a lot of small projects. And I am looking forward to like a couple big ones to show people 2022, 2023.
That's so exciting. I can't wait. So I think like if I'm still podcasting, I'm going to bring you back on to talk about them later.
Yes, please do. And eventually, if you keep playing poker, I'm going to have to bring you onto The Grid too.
I know, that'd be so exciting. So for the parting words, Jen, from you, I want to hear a piece of advice that you can give to girls and women out there right now on whatever journey they're on. What sort of parting words would you give to be able to survive this big bad world out there?
Oh boy. I think it's really parting words to women and girls in chess and poker or in any field.
basically any field, like being a woman in the world that we do live in right now, like obviously it can be chess poker related, but you know, what advice would you give to people out there to be, because you know, to me, you're a strong, powerful, confident woman. Like any girl would be honored to grow up to be like you. So how did you get there? Like honestly, like how did you get to be the person you are today?
Gosh, a lot of hard work. And I guess one thing I've done well is try to figure out like when you're most effective and do your hardest work during those times, right? So try to, like, if you have difficult, like sometimes people have anxiety about sending important emails to people who are maybe higher status than they are, older, or more famous, or whatever it might be, people that they're asking something for. I think it's really important to, find times where you're less anxious to make those asks, because otherwise they could just pile up and maybe you're not like reaching your full potential if you're not going after that, I find that that's really important, just find the times of day that you're good at these various tasks and go after it. Another thing I'd say is to, women, with balancing family and work, it's difficult. You have to decide, do you want a family? How big do you want it to be? And like, think about all those things. And I mean, I'm certainly not the first one to say that. Like, I think women are actually hounded with advice like that. It's really difficult. And like I said, I think things like family and having kids are some of the hardest ones to actually predict your real feelings about.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I had such different expectations than what reality was. So maybe I would have told my younger self to try to seek out some older friends who already had kids and actually offer to like babysit or something, so that I could have more of a real impression rather than just like my bizarre fantasies that babies were annoying, which turned out to be wrong. I love babies. Babies are great. And so I would have probably, I do have a very small family, very wonderful, loving family, but very small. So I might be a little unusual in that way. But I think that's one thing I would have told my younger self, like try to hang out with different types of families and see like what you want, and and get that like firsthand accounts.
I like that. But I think that also there is no right answer about when you should be starting a family or if you should be starting a family. I feel like there's so much advice out there. Like you said, people are going, oh, you need to do this, this, and this, but every single person's individual, right? Like there's no right or wrong time. And people are saying, you got to put your career first. No, you got to put kids first. Like everyone's different. So I feel like there's a lot of pressure on women, I feel like, when it comes to starting a family. And I think people need to just do what's right for them, right?
Well, the problem is finding out what's right for you, because advice is just going to be so, like, I'm trying to give advice that you should try to figure out what's right for you, because it's one of those things in life that's like very difficult to figure out just using books or firsthand accounts, because everybody is different. And maybe the best way to do it is try to like simulate like real life experiences by seeking out, and I think that's good for the world too. Like, I mean, how much easier would it be for women in well, I guess this pandemic is a bad example because people are trying to stay in their bubbles, but beyond the pandemic, if a woman has a new baby or a man, if you have a new child, whether you're a man or a woman, and all of your friends offer to like babysit, like that would be pretty awesome for them, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, some you'd probably say no.
Yeah.
No, Uncle Leo does not have to come and babysit. But I think that could give people like more of an understanding, because it just seems like sometimes there's like a shallower understanding of family because we're so work obsessed in a lot of our cultures.
I just love how the last bit also showcased how you analyze an extra move deeper than me, and the fact that I was like, yeah, when you're starting a family, you just got to do what's right, and you're like, wait, first you have to decide what is right. I'm just like, okay, you just out analyze me.
Well, yeah, I mean, it seems so obvious, like, but it's that I've learned from experience. It's not from out analyzing. It's just from learning from experience that there are some things in life that you can say, I know what I want. This is it. And I think there are other things where it's just a lot harder because as you change, your desires change and the goalpost keeps moving, right? So how do you figure out where that goalpost is? It's probably really difficult, but asking people who you respect, who are older or maybe at a different path in their life than you. I mean, that seems like, hey, I mean, it's going to be hard to do much better than that.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for today. It's been amazing having you on. Where can people find you? If they want to get in touch and ask more questions, like how can we get in touch with you?
Well, just like you told me on my podcast on Ladies Night, when I asked you the same question, is like, I am very easy to find online. JenniferShahade.com. I'm at Jen Shahade on Twitter and Instagram. And those are probably the best places to find everything that I do. The pokergrid.com, ladiesnight.org, uschess.org has information on my women's programs. But I usually try to keep the highlights on Twitter so that people can kind of like funnel their way to the good stuff.
Cool. So start on Twitter and then kind of find your way everywhere. Although I know that you are not Jen Shah from what's that show called?
From the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City.
You are definitely not her. That is the one mistake people don't want to get, right?
Yeah, that like I have my like little Google doppelganger. Although it's not that bad. Jennifer Shahade is a pretty rare name. I feel bad for people like we have a John Foley in one of our social groups, right? John Foley is like also like the CEO of Peloton or something.
Yeah.
I think.
I think I know two other John Foleys too.
Yes, there's one in the UK that also runs like the chess education conference.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So there you go. Like it's a very common name. I'm sure there's a few that's also very common in chess, but Jen Shahade and also Sabrina Shabans, I think we have fairly unique names. So if anyone gets us mixed up, then it's probably not us. As you said, we're both super easy to find, social media. So yeah, I just want to thank Jen for coming on today. You've been amazing, inspiring to women as usual. So thank you. And I will be sure to hit you up on social about stuff. And thank you for coming on.
You're welcome. Thank you, Sabrina. Congrats on your new podcast. Thanks. Exciting.
See you guys next week.